as many of us know, the FISU Gender Equality webinars are taking place on or around International Women's Day, which is usually on the 8th, or is always on the 8th of March. And by choosing this date, I think FISU is joining a number of institutions, a number of individuals and organizations that are gender just, that are conscious around women and their place in society, and actively trying to be part of those that are wanting to build an equitable society, economically, within social arrangements, in policy systems, and of course, in the sporting space. So it would be amiss if we aren't going to highlight at least the theme for International Women's Day this year, which is Accelerate Action. And today, as I said, we have the privilege of learning from the wisdom of two very passionate and phenomenal people, Francine Ravenet and Martin Johansson, who will share their presentations with us a little bit later. So I'm not sure if we should continue then perhaps with opening remarks from myself, where we look perhaps at the work that FISU through the Gender Equality Committee has done to see where we fit in the statement and the call to action on International Women's Day. Is that fine, Bertrand? Or have we sorted out the opening remarks and allowing then Leon's and Dr. Rosara in the call?
Yes.
Yes to continuing?
So I think Leon should be able to speak.
I'm just struggling to hear you. There's a slight echo.
You would like me to talk now?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Welcome, President. How are you?
You know, I'm well educated. I wait until somebody gives the floor to me. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen.
Leon, sorry, you have been muted. I don't know. We cannot hear you.
Still not?
Now, yes.
Now we can.
Yes, now, yes.
Thank you for giving me the chance to be online with you and to share a few thoughts at the beginning of this webinar. I looked back on my youth and my professional life. A lot has changed in relation to the topic of today's webinar, but there is still a need for action in some areas, and we must be aware that cultural, social, and geographical differences still exist and will probably continue to exist. In my environment, most parents give their children equal opportunities when it comes to leisure activities and career choices. In migrant families, however, there are major differences which sometimes lead to problems and disputes at school. A lot has changed for the better, not only in families where the foundations for equality needs to be laid, but also in schools. Coming to universities, in many countries, more women than men study at universities, and in university sport in general, but also in FISU at our competitions, we see at least a balance. However, this is not yet the case with officials, coaches, referees, supervisors, committee members, etc. They are still often male-dominated. We must all continue to address this by creating the appropriate opportunities, offering training courses, and, where necessary, enforcing positions by amending the regulations. All this takes time in some countries and organizations.
Leon, if you could just unmute again, we've just lost you.
No, it's somebody else with me, because yes. I don't touch the laptop, so somebody else must shut it down.
We'll ask the technical team just to be aware of that, so that you aren't muted again. Sorry, if you can continue.
I would like, okay. And as the saying goes, a constant drip wears away the storm. Let's all help with this process so that at some point such webinars will no longer be necessary. I would like to thank everyone involved in FISU, the speakers of today, and all of you for your efforts, so that step by step we can achieve equal rights for all, not only in sport, but also in other areas. I thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Martin, for starting with clapping hands reaction. I'm inviting everyone who is attending the webinar today to participate in the conversation using emojis, reactions, the chat function if you have a question or a comment during the presentations, so that we can keep the platform as vibrant as possible. I'm just going to check one more time if we do have Dr. Rosara in the call. Is that a no? Sorry, people are just muted. I'm not sure if there's someone who can assist us with unmuting. I can hear you now.
If not, please continue.
Okay. All right. So thank you so much for those opening remarks, Leons. We really appreciate that input. And I think fittingly then the emphasis on action and accelerated action on today's webinar is so important. Fittingly, when we speak about the theme for today, I want to share my slides again. The theme for today is gender equality. Are you ready? And it isn't just a statement, it's a call to action as well. It provokes self-reflection. It asks us, are we truly ready to embrace gender equality? Not just in principle, but in practice. Are our institutions, our communities, and our personal mindsets prepared for the work that gender justice requires? It also provokes discomfort because readiness implies change, and change is often met with resistance. It means shifting power, questioning norms, and confronting deeply embedded inequalities. So who are we provoking today with this theme? The short answer is everyone. Through the presentations today, we will see how existing projects driven by passionate individuals are challenging those who hold power and those who experience marginalization. The topic today rightfully calls on men and women to really assess their roles in either upholding or dismantling systems of inequality. It asks allies like Martin Johansson, are we truly prepared to move beyond performative support into meaningful action? If we look at the FISU Global Strategy 2027, there is no question of whether or not gender equality is necessary. That has long been established. Instead, the strategy calls for critical engagement on how to make equity, diversity, and inclusion not just an aspiration, but a reality. And in trying to activate that reality, it might be important to reflect on some of the FISU gender equality initiatives that are driven then obviously by the Gender Equality Committee. And we ask ourselves that it's so obvious, but the existence of a FISU Gender Equality Committee itself is already a journey towards gender equity. It isn't in many spaces where we can enjoy spaces where we mainstream ideas and thinking about women and equality. We also have the annual FISU webinars that are like the one that we're having today, and they usually are on various aspects of gender equality. On the surface, these events create spaces for discussion, education, and advocacy, but they also fulfill a much deeper role of inspiring accountability and actionable change within our organization and society. There's also the roundtables that are in every edition of the FISU World University Games, where university sport actors discuss work that has been done and future proposals as well. I'm going to move to the Gender Equality Awards before I return to the review. The Gender Equality Awards are biannual, and here we are recognizing and awarding persons, projects, and programs that are championing gender equality. The 2025 applications are still open, and please nominate and put forward names through your national university, your national and your continental sports federations. We then also have the FISU Gender Equality Review, which was proposed in 2020, and it's an ongoing project where we are reviewing FISU activities, governance, structure, and events. And the intention of the review is to ultimately make recommendations for a deliberate and focused strategy for achieving a gender-responsive organization. It's a massive undertaking, and essentially there's 6 strands that are drawn from the UN guidelines for gender-responsive sports organizations. They cover, in short, leadership and governance strands. They cover prevention of violence. They cover economic and investment and promotion of equal opportunities. They also cover how women are portrayed in sports media and analyzing then how to better in that space. They also cover how to support equal opportunities for women and girls and how to monitor on a regular basis the activities of such a program of action. That is a very basic overview of the initiatives that we do have. And maybe without taking too much time, we can look as well at some of the progress that FISU has made in terms of the statistics and the numbers that have come from some of that research work. We can see growth over the years when it comes to gender parity and the participation of women. We also know that there is increased gender parity in FISU participation events as we move forward, right? I don't want to focus solely on the FISU progress, and I don't want to focus necessarily on us without giving an opportunity to the presenters and the speakers today to give us an overview of the work that they do. And we'll use then the work that FISU does as a conceptual linchpin, if we may, to try and bring together some of the practical examples that they present. Francine, if I can ask you to share your screen first for your presentation.
Thank you, Nobu. Thank you to everybody at FISU for inviting me, and hello to everyone this afternoon. It's really my pleasure and my honour to speak to you all. And I just want to say I love the words that you've used, dismantling the systems of inequality. And are we ready for equality? I think absolutely we are. The time is now. And I'll try and really give you an overview of the work that we're doing in the Enlarged Partial Agreement on Sport. So let me just show my screen first of all. Can you all see that clearly? Yeah, great. I can see some nods. Brilliant. So you can see my title here is as Deputy Executive Secretary of the Council of Europe's Enlarged Partial Agreement on Sport. I think it's fair to say I've been a gender equality activist my whole life, working also in the audiovisual sector and also studying women's studies. In the first year it existed at master's level at Oxford. So really it's been a lifelong commitment to equality. Now the slides are moving. Here we go. So what I want to tell you first is a little bit the context of EPAS. So I don't know how many people know what EPAS already is. It's an enlarged partial agreement on sport. It means that countries opt in to join this partial agreement, and it sits within the Council of Europe. What makes it super exciting is that because countries opt in, we have 41 member states, and we have a really great platform which allows us to work at intergovernmental level, but with advice from grassroots sports organisations. So we have a governing board, and that's the 41 member states, representatives from, it might be ministries for for sports, or it might be national sports agencies. We have a statutory committee, also intergovernmental. So they are the representatives, often from Ministries for Foreign Affairs, based in Strasbourg. And then, as I mentioned, we have the Consultative Committee, which is 30 grassroots organisations, really ranging in size. We have the European Paralympic Committee, FISU, and UEFA. So you can see we've got quite a range of grassroots sports organisations. And what's really good is that they can really all be involved together, so that the Consultative Committee can help guide the work of the intergovernmental policies, so it can actually bring about change, which is exciting. I want to really talk about one main project that EPAS will now inherit, which is called All In Plus, Promoting Greater Gender Equality in Sport. It was a 2-year project funded by the European Union and implemented by the Council of Europe. But before I delve into that, I just want to tell you a little bit more about the way that EPAS works as well. So we have 3 key pillars of our work. We work in the area of ethical sport, inclusive sport, and safe sport. And everything that we do in the area of sport is values-based. So we have here in the corner of the screen the revised European Sports Charter. And the European Sports Charter is really a document that I advise you to look at after my presentation. And it really guides the way that we work. And I think it's important because it's stressing that sport should be multi-stakeholder and also should have these values embedded. And of course, within the European Sports Charter, gender equality is a fundamental element. Now, there's an event I'm going to plug because nobody you mentioned about the International Women's Day. We also have an event every year. And this is the current theme for this year's International Women's Day is actually on women's health and sport. And this is an area where we realised that not enough work by a million miles has been done. So in fact, this is our first almost awareness raising roundtable on this subject. And there's still a chance for those of you who wish to register online to follow it. So please don't hesitate to follow the link. And I think FISU, as with you, we couldn't host it on the Saturday because no one was in the office. So that's why we're holding it on the Friday Central European time. So that's going to be happening then. Really excited about the panelists and the speakers. And this will be a first dip into the subject area. And what I'm really hoping is it will lead to more work and more awareness about women's health and sport. And another event we have later in the year on the 16th of December will be a human rights forum on health and sport, more overarching, and probably will also have an angle on equality in women's health and sport within it. So now the big topic I really wanted to talk about today was All In Plus. All In Plus, as I mentioned, was a really exciting 2-year project. And essentially the work that was done within the All In Plus project will now be taken over by EPAS and the recommendations implemented. All In Plus, promoting greater gender equality in sport, had 3 pillars. The first pillar, which is the one you'll hear a lot about from me today, I'm going to give you a lot of statistics and data, which I don't normally do, but I will do, was a data collection across 21 jurisdictions. And again, no, but great to hear you the work at FISU because it's very similar in terms of indicators, as we'll see soon, similar indicators we're looking at. The second pillar for the All In Plus project was actually collecting best practice examples. And I think we have up to 80 examples, which can consult on the website as well, which are really useful and really cover different areas. And then the third pillar, which I'm particularly proud of, is media sensitization. And this was the first time we'd actually worked in the area of working with the media. And by sensitization, we ran 2 media informative sessions and we brought together a network of sports journalists. And we held the first informative session at the IOC headquarters in Lausanne back in 2023. And then last year, we held the second media informative session at the European Broadcasting Union in Geneva. And it was just really great to see the progress in terms of awareness raising and understanding about how to combat stereotypical representation. This is a website of the All In Plus programme, and I really recommend that you have a look at it. And you can see here we have the online library, we have the resources section and data collection. So really invite everyone to look after my presentation in more detail, because it's an absolute treasure trove of information. And really, you're talking about making the change, and we really feel that we did make a change with the project, but now we're going to carry on and build on that. So I wanted to really have a look at some of the data, to dig into the data to start with. And first of all, the areas that we covered. So the project had 6 strategic fields. Firstly, leadership, as you've mentioned already. We had coaching, and we added officiating, because often the officiators are forgotten in talking about gender equality. We have participation, combating gender-based violence, the media communication angle, and also gender equality policies and programmes. In terms of target groups, for the data mining, so this is the pillar 1 data mining, we are really working with ministries and government departments responsible for sport, but then also with lots of national Olympic committees and national Paralympic committees, as well as sports federations. So we had a previous project called All In, and in the All In project, we had 18 jurisdictions, but this project, All In Plus, actually expanded to 21 jurisdictions. So that includes Albania, Austria, Belgium, Cyprus, the Czech Republic, Finland, France, Georgia, Greece, Iceland, Israel, Lithuania, Montenegro, Malta, Netherlands, Portugal, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, Ukraine, as well as Kosovo. I cite all of them because you can actually find in the resource section of the All In Plus website some fact sheets, and you can get the data per country. So it's really great for having information. But on top of that, we also have a map, so you can really dip in and per indicator, so it might be leadership or coaching, compare and contrast between countries as well, to really dig into that data mine, and it's really useful information. So you've heard already the list of countries involved, and just to really stress as well, it was absolutely based in terms of timing in quantitative data in 2023. So that's the data on gender equality policies, or any policies addressing prevention of gender-based violence, was from 2023 specifically. So I'm afraid to say, I feel like our findings were not as good as yours in terms across the board, but let's dig in. So first of all, gender equality in leadership. So women really were significantly underrepresented in powerful roles in sports federations in the 21 jurisdictions we looked at. So I think the statistics speak for themselves. 12% of presidents only were women. Equally, in powerful roles in Olympic and Paralympic committees, we can see women standing only as presidents at 14%, a little better as vice presidents at 31%, but still we really know that there needs to be improvements in this area. Board members, 32%. And since 2020, 60% of sports organisations have taken action to recruit more women into decision-making roles. So that's a good thing. That can bring about change, but still, obviously, it's not enough. So we can see that 40% haven't taken the action. And so really, we can see the areas where action has to be taken. So some additional findings. The countries where we found we have the consistently highest number of female representation, be it president, vice president, or board member, was in Sweden, Finland, and Iceland. But in 16 countries, some federations had absolutely no female board members whatsoever. It really highlights the disparities that we can see. And the proportion of female executive heads of sports federations and Olympic Paralympic committees in the countries surveyed reaches just 25%. Again, not very satisfactory. We can see that skating and gymnastics consistently showed the higher representation among presidents and vice presidents. And the most proactive in recruiting women include athletics at 91%, triathlon at 87%, and boxing at 86%. We have a whole load of recommendations. I'm not going to go through all of them for every indicator. Otherwise, I'll be talking to you for 3 hours and not 30 minutes. But I put them on the screen so you can see as well. And again, if you consult the resource section on the All In Plus webpage I showed you earlier, you'll find also the analytical report of the data collected. And that includes these recommendations that are appearing on your screen now. So I really encourage you, after I finish speaking, to go to the website and have a look at these recommendations for action, because I think they can be found to be really helpful and really useful. And one of the things which I kind of stress when I had to pick out the main area for gender equality and leadership, which I think is really important, and it's not only relevant in sport, but it's relevant in other areas as well, is that there are absolutely some cultural and structural barriers, and we have to really address those. The barriers that discourage women from pursuing or for being selected for leadership roles, and that's systemic discrimination. And so I think that's something that really needs addressing, and training has to be offered to try and make sure that not only women are encouraged to apply, but once they do apply, they're actually able to be taken seriously as well. So I think there's a whole issue about what leadership looks like, and I think it's important to address that. Now, coaching, the next area that we mentioned, you'll see that women make up only 22% of registered coaches and 22% of elite level coaches. I gave an anecdote in the All In Plus closing event whereby I'm a trained coach. I qualified quite recently in my spare time. And I actually had someone questioning why I would possibly want to have a dual career that included coaching. And it was, in fact, a woman who tried to put me off becoming a coach, just to say those structural barriers exist all over the place and we have to really fight them, all the time. Since 2020, 50% of sports organisations have taken action to recruit and increase the number of female coaches. So that's a good thing. 50% have taken action, but then 50% haven't taken any action whatsoever. So again, lots more work needed. And you can see the findings here, the wide gender gap that you can see in countries like Montenegro, Czech Republic, Georgia, and Ukraine. And also there are types of areas where women are more prevalent in coaching. So for example, sports like skating at 87%, swimming at 47%, canoe kayak at 36%. Whereas sports like tennis, hockey, rugby, football, ice hockey, badminton, boxing and cycling had less than 10% female representation among coaches. So really a lot of work to do there. We can see the number there for Olympic sports, that female representation among elite level coaches is at 28%. So it's much higher at the elite level than at grassroots level, where it stands only at 10%. Sports officiating, we're really proud actually that we included sports officiating into the All In Plus project, because it wasn't in there before. So this is a new angle to look at. And when we had a breakfast roundtable last year focusing on equality in sports officiating, and we really saw there was a huge problem of inequalities in this area, and that women who worked as sports officiators really suffered a lot of abuse as well. So important to have this this group included. And you'll see here that in terms of registered sports officials, it stands at 32% women only, and at elite level, same number across our jurisdictions. So there's a real gender gap. Since 2020, 47% of sports organisations have actually taken action to increase the number of female sports officials. So that's a good thing, but still lots more work to be done to have more women working as sports officials. So some extra findings, and the extra findings are always tough, but anyway, women make up only 32% of sports officials at country level. But in a country like Iceland, for example, it reached 67%, so much better representation. And in Olympic and Paralympic sports, women represent 43% of officials overall, with skating the highest at 84% and gymnastics at 73%. But football and ice hockey have really the fewest, under 10%. And the three most proactive sports for making change are badminton at 81%, rugby at 75%, and football at 74%. Now, again, I'm not going to go through all the recommendations. You can see that we've got lots of them here. One of the things that I would, if I had to pick out one recommendation for this area, it would absolutely be to invest in research and data collection, because we just don't have enough information either on coaches or on sports officiators. And just also to mention that the aim of the work of All In Plus indicators now is not that these indicators sit here as and across 21 jurisdictions and will be repeated in 5 years' time by us, but we really want to work with other organisations so that the indicators can be taken and used by other organisations or adopted as needed, so that they can actually be transposed to different continents and different groups as well. So the idea is to have this information and to share it, and that's how we can really bring about change, by encouraging comparability of data collection as well. So sports participation. So again, Nobu, I think your stats were a little bit better than ours, but we'll see. But women, the dropout is actually over 18, because you can see that across the board it's 31% for women participating, and this is membership of National Olympic and Paralympic sports federations, really taking part in the sport. Under 18, 35%, and after 18, a dropout, so 27%. So the action taken to increase women and girls' participation in sports has been pretty good. 60% of sports organisations have taken action to increase women and girls' participation in sport. So that's really good news. And you can see the types of organisations that have tried to increase the participation. Another data stat here that's interesting as well is athletes participating in elite competitions. So women's participation stands at 36% across the jurisdictions that we were looking at in the All In Plus project. And then again, action taken to ensure gender equality resources amongst elite level athletes, 59%. So really, you know, movements happening, changes happening, you know, there is some backing, and hopefully that will just increase as well in terms of participation. So women and girls represent only 37% of all sports federation members, and women's participation, as we can see now, is much lower at 27% compared to men at 73%. And we found that the ministries and national agencies were the most proactive in trying to increase participation. Again, I'm not going to go through all of the recommendations for action. If I had to choose one of them, I think it would be having comprehensive national strategies for gender equality in sports participation. I think the push has to come really from above and then filter down. And I think we have to really take steps to bring about that change, because participation is so important. But again, we'll talk about this as well a little bit at our breakfast roundtable on the 7th of March in the morning as well. A ton of other recommendations as well, as you can see here. And again, I'm happy to share these slides afterwards if you want to share them and have a look at the data as well. But all the information's in the analytical report that we have. A super important topic for us was preventing gender-based violence in sport. Again, another subject topic that we discussed at a breakfast roundtable now 2 years ago. We had quite a traumatic breakfast roundtable 2 years ago because we invited athletes to share their lived experience with us. And I think you can still see the recording on our website. And they were very open, and it was different forms of violence, and it was just very tough. So we can see here that since 2020, 39% of sports organisations have a policy or an action plan to help prevent gender-based violence in sport. But clearly that really isn't enough. We've got to do a lot more work in this area to increase that. I'm going to go back to a slide. Really important as well is having funds allocated to implement any gender-based violence policy or action plan. So it's not enough that 33% have them. We really need to increase that figure. Again, here we can see action taken by 44% of sports organisations, really just not enough. A lot more work needs to be done. And athletics was the one that stands out for linking policy with implementation, because again, it's not enough just to have a policy, we really need to have the implementation as well. And look at that figure at the end, just 37% are providing victim support. So recommendations for action. Again, I'm going to focus on one here. And the one is that we really want to work at EPAS with other organisations to work together and to prevent gender-based violence in sport. We're working a lot already with UNESCO especially. They've been working very hard. They've come up with a handbook and lots of guidelines as well for preventing gender-based violence in sport. So we want to keep on working with them to really strengthen the mechanisms in place as well. And obviously, we need tailored initiatives. So not just prevention, but what happens when someone's a victim as well. So that's really important to develop this area going forwards. Moving on to media. So the media representation was the kind of the newish angle for this project compared to previous iterations. And one of the reasons it's so important is it's not enough just to have the data or the policies in place, but really we wanted to bring on board sports journalists and sports media so that they were stakeholders in bringing about change themselves. We call the sessions with them the media informative sessions, so it didn't sound too schooling. And we shared things like the IOC portrayal guidelines. And also we brought in Professor Tony Bruce from New Zealand, who's done a lot of really great work over there as well, in really overhauling the way the sports media work in New Zealand. So they're trailblazing, actually, the work that they're doing. So you can see from the data here that since 2020, 35% of sports organisations have targeted the media to have more gender balanced representation of those practising sport. And 28% have guidelines for gender representation and communication materials, but that's really not enough. We need to do a lot more work there. Only 35% have really taken action to promote the gender balanced media. Austria at 65% is leading the way, Spain at 59%, and then Israel at 53%. Also, huge variation across different sports disciplines. Rugby stands at 58%, basketball at 55%, and golf at 53%, really leading the area in this. Leading the way in this area. And again, we have lots of recommendations. For me, one of the most important ones is continuing to support training and awareness raising. And actually, what you mentioned also, Nobu, at the start, calling out, you know, if someone's making a sexist comment, call it out. You know, there's a recent Scottish journalist who I saw her this weekend, actually, and she directly called out a sports commentator who said out loud, no one's interested in women's football. And she repeatedly said, that's just not true. So I think that calling out as well makes a difference. And I think we have to not be fearful to call things out, which are just really inappropriate. So loads of other recommendations, but there's some key ones for you to think about. Now, policies to address gender equality in sport. We see that 67% of sports organisations really had long-term plans, but only 34% actually had a policy for advancing gender equality in sport. So still an awful lot of work to do to transpose having it in a long-term plan and then really committing to have a written policy for advancing gender equality in sport. Here you can see we've got, in terms of amounts of money, 63% human resources, 56% across the board monitoring and evaluation, but then in terms of dedicated funding, we're dropping to 39%. So obviously the funding has to follow as well. It's not enough just to talk about it, the funding also has to follow. And in terms of gender equality strategies for sports participation, we saw that across the countries we were questioning, 24% had affirmative action and 26% had gender mainstreaming. Again, not high enough. And what we really found interesting is those countries that was really pushing for change. So we've really got Sweden, Finland, France, and Spain that had adopted policies. And in those countries, between 56% to 61% had a written plan to bring about policy to address gender equality in sport. And as I mentioned already, there's that gap there. 56% might have allocated human resources, but if you've only got 39% with allocated funds, it's just not enough. The money has to follow as well. You can see here that the sport that has the highest number of federations with a gender equality plan is rugby, then followed by athletics of 57%. And gymnastics was the only sport where only 6% of its federations across all countries reported having a gender equality plan. Recommendations. Again, there are lots here, but if we have to think about policies to address gender equality in sport, for me, if I have to choose one of these, it's going to be allocating adequate and sustainable resources. It's not enough to drop a little bit of cash in from time to time and feel good about yourself. Really, there has to be a financial investment to really bring about change that's lasting and not short term. And also those partnerships are important as well. So EPAS will continue building partnerships to make sure that change is brought about. And that's one of the most important things that we've come up with in terms of our way that we work. So I'm going to leave it there for now. And I know there'll be questions later on. So I will stop sharing. You've got my contact address there for Sport EPAS. I've stopped sharing. So hopefully we can wait till after the next speaker for questions for me.
Definitely. No, thank you so much for that presentation. Very detailed. And I'm sure that everyone was listening and jotting down the kind of questions that they'd like to ask you in the engagement session at the end. So we'll give over to Martin now and then allow for his presentation. And then afterwards, we'll attend to all the questions, the many questions, I hope.
Yes, thank you so much, Nobo. I'll just share this slide here. Let's see this one. Thank you so much for this presentation, Francine. It was very interesting. Let me just... Okay, you can hear me fine? Everything's good? Perfect. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you for inviting me to guest speak on this seminar, and very interesting. This topic is right in my pipeline, so I am here to speak to you today as an IRC Young Leader and as a male ally. Shortly about me, my name is Martin. I'm a former athlete and I'm a current coach. So I'm going to talk about my project, Coach Equity, which is a lot about coaching. So coaching is very dear to my heart. I say here I'm former Danish, current Norwegian. So very funny with Francine's stats there that included all the Scandinavian countries, but not Norway and Sweden. So that's a shame, because I think the Scandinavian countries with like Sweden, Finland, Iceland, Norway, and Denmark is leading a lot of the way for this gender equality debate and the projects. But I'm Danish, living in Norway in Oslo now, and then I'm former young and now 30. But still younger than some, but still a IRC young leader. So I'm still young a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, and then just a short overview of the content here. I will speak about the IRC program, IRC Young Leader program that I'm part of, and how that led me to create Coach Equity, which is the project that I'm leading, and then a few statements from me as a male ally. And then I have this really cool video, which unfortunately doesn't have any sound, but it has some subtitles. So just imagine a lot of cool sound and music, and everything is very fast, and then read the subtitles as you hear the video. Okay, let's see if we can actually continue the slide. There we go. Yeah, so a little bit about the IRC Young Leader program. It's a 4-year program which you get accepted through. So you have this. It's a lot of people applying for the first. You have these online sessions where you can join, and you have to go through a long selection process. We just had the recent cohort come in with the IRC Young Leaders 2025 to 2029. Over 5,000 people attended the first session, and only 25 gets picked out in the end. So it's a very narrow field to get through. And once you get on this program, you have 4 years where you get supported by the IOC to create your own sustainable development project, where you take one of these, you use one of these sustainable development goals, and then create a project which basically changes the world through sport. So the vision stands here. I like to say change the world through sport because it sounds cool, and it feels like that's what we do. But it's really based on your own environment, local communities. So this is not a project like Francine told you about, where like we are worldwide and we're gonna do a lot of different things. The project I do, Coach Equity, is very locally based in Norway and Denmark, and we do small efforts. But in this IOC community, there's just a lot going on with so many different people working together. So as you can see up here, the new cohort is very interesting for me, who's been in the program for 2 years now, because we just accepted this last month the 24-5 new faces. I haven't even met them yet, so they don't know they're on the screen here. But those are the new young leaders who are gonna make more change, and they're joined into the community. So just an overview of the IOC Young Leader Program in general. Over 55,000 lives have been impacted through all these programs. It started in 2016. We are 145 young leaders now from a lot of different countries, and over 160 different projects. So it's a really extensive program, and I really applaud the IOC for taking this effort. Just like FISU, it's like a sport organization that doesn't have to care about the world, but they do. And I think that's really amazing, because there's so many sport projects who just do the sport and doesn't care about how we can use sport to make the world a better place. So yeah, I can just up in the right corner here, you see it says Advancing Olympism 365. So just a small comment on that the IOC, a lot of people, it says the IOC is the games. It's the Olympic Summer Games and the Olympic Winter Games, but the Olympism 365 is kind of the strategy of putting the Olympic values out there every day. So not just at the games, but they do a lot of different things with the strategy, and the IOC Young Leader Program is one of them. Yes. So a little bit more about the project I do and how I got into gender equality. Francine said that she was a lifetime gender equality advocate, so to say. That's not the case for me, I'm sorry to say. I just recently learned how important and how interesting this whole field is, so to say. So we call us males, I don't know how to, but we call ourselves male allies, because we want to be an ally of the people who are not dominating the sporting field. So to give you a little background of how I got into the coaching and the gender equality environment and this project. As I said in the beginning, I'm a coach, and I was coaching in Denmark. I was leading together with a team of 3 other coaches, a group of athletes. So it's in athletics, and the 3 of us, or the 4 of us, were all males. Of course, I say it because it's a very male-dominated coaching environment, also in the Nordic countries where we are more on the forefront on gender equality. So we were 4 males. We were coaching a group of maybe 15 teenagers, and everything was good. It was just, we were just having a good time coaching, making process and results. And then something gradually happened. Nothing crazy, nothing extreme, nothing serious, but what I like to, in need of a better word, some of the female athletes starting having these classical teenage reactions, not problems, but reactions, and you can say they were a little bit afraid of fitting in. They started having fear of competing. Just these. Yeah, it's wrong to say classical teenage problems, but in lack of a better word to say it. And the four of us, the coaches that were in this group, we just lacked the language and the knowledge and the skills to talk to these girls about these problems. But in order to get the athlete group to function well and the whole environment to function well, we needed to fix not the girls, but we needed to fix the whole environment, and we needed more diversity. So without us really knowing it, we were having some issues that led the group to function badly. So what then happened, kind of randomly, was that a female sports psychologist student came into the group, to the coaches, and she wanted to work with us just as part of her studies. And without us really knowing it, take in mind that we didn't know there was a problem here. We just kept going, like kind of not knowing that we could do better. And then she came in and she started having conversations with the girls, and they starting to thrive in a whole different way than they were before. And then it went a lot better. Like, we started seeing results. They were thriving a lot more. There were a lot better communication and within the group, and the environment starting being a lot better. And later on, I started to reflect on what actually happened here. And maybe it wasn't because of the whole gender imbalance, but more that us as male coaches, we lacked the skills to talk to these girls in the way that we should have. But that also led me to think that this undiversified field, this male-dominated coaching field, was the whole problem in the beginning. So fast forward 1 year, I was lived now in Greenland, the very north of the Scandinavian countries. I heard about the IRC program, and I thought that this was a perfect way for me to make an impact in an environment where I actually thought I could do something. So I applied for the IRC and Leaders program. I used the Sustainable Development Goal number 5, gender equality, and I come up with a project of coach equity. So I applied, I got accepted, and then coach equity kind of rolled on from there. And now I've said here, I don't know, I said it's a data-driven approach, but just coming from Francis' presentation, I think mine is kind of very novice data-driven approach. Because what I then in the beginning thought, I want to find out some data on female coaches, like where are we, what do we know? And in the Norwegian countries, the Scandinavian countries, I just didn't find any data on female athletics coaches. Also a very narrow field, but I had a lot of struggle to find out like how many are we, how do they thrive, what are the comparisons to male coaches. So I made my own questionnaire, used from some efforts done by the Irish Athletics Federation. And here's just a small snip of some of the data. If we start at the bottom right here, I asked some questions about how these women were thriving in the coaching environments that they were in. And luckily, it looked very well. There were not many reports on harassment. There weren't much, they were thriving in general. A lot of the coaches were alone as female coaches in the clubs. But as you can see here, over 90% felt that they were respected in the same way as male coaches. And I know these numbers would be a lot different if you go outside of Scandinavia, outside of Europe. But in the Norwegian countries, I think it's rather a better place to be a female coach. But another interesting thing that you could have told me before, but as a male ally, I didn't think of myself, was that the main reason to quit coaching, or one of the main barriers for these coaches, were the lack of time, the lack of actually, because the thing is, if you look at what we call in the literature called unpaid work, so all this work that that is getting the kids from school, tending to the elderly, cleaning the house. 75% of all this work in general is done by females. And if you look at it's funny because in Denmark, it's in the country in the world who have the highest unpaid working hours by males. So us Danes, us males, we do a lot of unpaid work, and that's great. And if you compare to the Norwegian countries, that's the country where females do the least unpaid work. So it fits perfectly with me and my wife, because my wife is Norwegian, and she does less unpaid work, and I do more unpaid work. It doesn't really work like that. But still, the females in Norway do more unpaid work than men do in Denmark. So there is a gender imbalance here. And that, I think, is one of the main issues that we have in coaching, because females doesn't have the time in general to do this, to do the coaching the same as the men do. And it's very much put up in these gender biases right now, but that's how I talk about it anyway. Another by fact here is, if you look at the bottom, where on the left one here, what would be the main reason why you would quit coaching? Bad environment for women has various it's not many that said that, but if bad environment in general, it's almost 40%. So it also exemplifies that it's not the women who are treated bad in these communities, it's more bad environment in general. So it's just, I think it's interesting when you have a thesis on that female coaches are treated bad. I think that's not the case in Norway and Denmark anyway. Great. So based on this small kind of data collection that I did, we created Coach Equity, which has the kind of vision saying equipping female coaches with the means to lead both on and off the track. So that's like the vision statement, and then we have the 4 pillars. I'm also going to talk about pillars with you, but just briefly here, where the most important one is the network that we can create for these female coaches, saying that they're not alone in their coaching job they have, or the coaching passion. There's a lot of other female coaches they can connect with. We have mentoring, both peers mentoring and also mentors. Like, we want to give them mentors, as I'll talk about in a minute. We want to be Coach Equity wants to have influence in the environment. So we want to be an organization that other organizations or our partners look up to and say, these are guys who actually do something for gender equality in the environment. And then we want skill and knowledge building for the coaches in the network or in the project. And just briefly mentioning down here that in the far down left, we have the Danish and Norwegian Athletics Association that we work closely with. And then European Athletics is also a big one, cooperation partner for us. So a little bit more in specific what Coach Equity will do in 2025 and what that project is actually about. And we have 2 different processes going right now, instances, one in Norway and one in Denmark. Something that I should also say is that Norway and Denmark is very close to each other. It's neighboring countries who has like the same a lot of same politics and culture and sporting culture. So it's very easy to work together here. In the summer in Norway, in Bergen, which is one of the biggest cities in Norway, we have the Under-23 European Athletics Championships. So this is a huge event, one of the biggest athletics events in Norway for many years. And I'm now working together with Norwegian Athletics and Danish Athletics to do 2 different things here. One of the things we're going to do with Norwegian Athletics is that we are inviting female coaches to get accreditation to these championships, where they're going to follow a mentor coach. So let's say there's a coach who has some athletes who are going to these championships. The coach gets accreditation and her athletes compete at the championships. Then we will contact her and we will ask her if she wants a mentee to follow her around the championships. And then within the networking group that we have with Norwegian Athletics, we're gonna have a selection process and choose out some female coaches who can then get accreditation, transportation to the championships that we are then going to pay for. And then they're going to have they're going to have network, because they're going to network with the other coaches. They're going to have a mentor, and they're going to get the knowledge and skill building it is being at a championships. So that's the effort we're going to do in Norway, and that's more of the equity way, where we actually choose the women because they're women. And then in Denmark, we're going to have more equality kind of project, where we have the Danish Athletics Young Leader Academy, where we're going to help them to go to the championships as well. So this is more of a getting young people in leadership positions. So we're going to have both males and females here, where they're going to be sent to the championships as well, officiating at the championships. Yeah, so that's in general what 2025 is about. And I will just finish off with some statements. This AI generated picture here in the left, where I've put myself in the middle, is sometime how I can feel as a male ally, not because I'm the only male who is a male ally, but because you can sometimes, like in the Nordic countries here, I've come across many great projects working with gender equality, and not just here, but with the IOC and everywhere. There's a lot of projects working with this, but it's a lot of females behind these projects, and I think it's very natural, and it's very like it's the way it is. But sometimes you can feel like kind of with this imposter syndrome, or you can feel like the women's like, why are you working with this? It should be like it's all the other projects are led by women. So you can sometimes feel a bit alone, and feel like you don't fit in. So it even like shifts where I'm instead of being a male-dominated coaching environment, I'm suddenly in a female-dominated project environment. I don't know how to say that, but I think in order to get to a conclusion here, we need to understand both the history, because the sporting world was built by men and for men. If you think about the old Greek, where only naked men were allowed to compete in the Olympics, we are not there anymore, luckily. But then we also need to understand the present right now, where one of my big takeaways is that we really need to engage both gender in the debate. Otherwise, it's just, women speaking about gender equality and males being like, yes, we approve this message, and then going back to whatever they do. So I hope that we can engage some more males in this debate as well. I hope that males will be motivated to start some gender equality processes and some different things. And then last for me is just to say, let's celebrate March of 8 together. And thank you for your time. You're welcome to follow me, hit me up with an email, follow me wherever you want, and go check out the IOC Young Leaders process, because there's a lot of cool things going on there. So yeah, thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Martin. I think I speak for everyone on the call who's attending the webinar, that we've just had two very amazing presentations. And really, 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 if we were in person, I'm sure we would be shouting and clapping and really celebrating what we've seen today, some practical examples of how to get things done. I know that people have some questions. I've seen one or two in the chat. And just by way of starting that conversation where we involve everyone in, and you can ask your questions directed to Francine or to Martin, I would just like to give a brief moment to the chairperson of the Gender Equality Committee, Dr. Rosara. I see you have joined. If you could just share some thoughts on the webinar today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Novelle, for your great conduct this webinar. Dear friends, Mr. President, dear FISU family, thank you for joining for this webinar. Special thank our guests for the important information for this moment for our organization is very, very important. We have the a special moment in our organization. This webinar is for the commemorate the gender equality, the gender day for International Women's Days. It's for us, it's very, very important this day because the sport is a fundamental right and powerful tool to strengthen social peace and promote sustainable development and peace, as well as solidarity and respect for all people. However, despite all the progress, sport in general is still considered an space in which stereotypes that reproduce inequality and gender violence and reinforce. In this past few years, FISU, like and other international sport organization, has taken up the task of creating action that allow it to consolidate a modern organization capable of providing equal opportunities for all our members. The Executive Committee, together with the Gender Equality Committee, has proposed and developed action aiming to implement policies and programs to achieve in this objective to be a fair and equality organization. In this quarter of century 2025, we continue to face great challenges to achieve gender equality, among which we can highlight access and opportunities, financing and sportsmanship, gender stereotype, violence, violence, violence and harassment, and in the media continue to exclude us, and we continue to be invisible. We are need working for all areas, for all scenarios to give opportunities to female athletes, judges, coach, leaders, for all scenarios. Today, we are clear that barriers have been broken down, but we also know this is not enough. That is why we are here today, asking you, are you ready for the change our organization? Are you ready for the gender equality in the sport, in the university sport, in the movement sport? You need be ready. We need to be ready. Not only we together need be ready. Promoting for the new space for analyze and dialogue with the aim of continue to create best conditions so that all women in our organization have the equal opportunities. They can continue to grow and the stranger and more inclusive FISU. And FISU need be the FISU World Organization that represent us all and allow to me to move forward. FISU need be ready. FISU prepared to be ready, and FISU asking you, are you ready for the next time, for the gender equality, for the new organization, for the organization for equal opportunities for all members? Thank you so much for your participation. Thank you for the good information, for the very, very valued information for our organization. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rosara, for those remarks. And I think it's such an important remark as well, colleagues, that we are being reminded again of the essence of why we are attending this webinar today, this call to action. And Dr. Rosara is also reminding us then also of this watershed moment that we are in. If I can just abuse my privilege a little bit by picking a question that I'm seeing in the question and answer that just marries what we've just heard. And it's a question that comes from Michelle, if I'm not mistaken. And it's a question both to Martin and Francine. I'm not sure if you have access to the question and answer section. So I'm just going to read it out for the sake of the recording and in case you can't see it. It's a question that asks, firstly, thank you for your presentations, very interesting. We have lots to do on gender equality for the FISU family on this International Women's Week 2025. What is one thing that you would recommend to this audience as a call to action on this important week? And of course, keep up your excellent work. So maybe we start with Francine, that one thing that you would recommend.
Yeah, organizations have to put money and invest into real participation of women in sport. And so put your money where your mouth is what I say, because challenging systemic inequality can only be done with financial support.
Martin?
Yes, I'm going to say spread the awareness. Go out on social media, go and share and scream wherever you can. Get your voices heard and use every channel of communication that you can to engage in the week.
I'm just scanning quickly through the chat as well and trying to see if there are other questions that we might have missed related to the presentations. I'm going to allow as well people to raise their hands as well if they'd like to articulate their question with their microphone on. I see Sonia already has a hand up. So Sonia, please, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Does everyone hear me?
Yes,
Great.
we can.
So I had to ask two questions. For the first one was like, do you observe a significant regional disparities in gender equality in university sports? And if so, what measures are being taken to address them? And also, what are the main challenges? And can you share examples of successful policies or initiatives from certain countries that could serve the models? And I have a question for the organizations that are on, like the ICO, I guess, to promote the gender equality university sports, like how these partnerships help advance gender equality university sport in regions where disparities are not pronounced.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. We will be running. Yes, sorry, Sonia, am I disturbing you? I think we captured the two questions. Okay, thank you.
I'm going to write them in the conversation too.
Thank you. Thank you. I think, colleagues, in the interest of time, we've had a very fruitful discussion with the presentations. I'm going to ask that if you do have the ability or the capability to type your question in the chat, that would also be wonderful. Then we can capture and collate those questions to continue the conversation. I think Leona said quite accurately in the beginning that we don't want to have webinars all the time, but they are important moments for us to be able to educate, talk, advocate, start the discussion and continue it on other platforms. So all the questions that we do share on the chat, we will be able to continue and answering those on other platforms as well. Francine, in the 10 minutes that we have, I'm not sure, do you have a response to the two questions?
Yeah, I can be really succinct. Sonia,
Thanks.
thank you for the question. Really great questions. The first one, we didn't specifically in our All In Plus project focus on university sports. So I cannot give you a definitive answer about the data there, but I would say that if a study were to happen in that area, it would be really great to use the indicators that we've used and transpose them to see comparability and dropout rates and things like this. And in terms of regional differences, yes, there were regional differences. It's actually all included in the resource page of the website I shared with you earlier for All In Plus, and we actually have a map, so you can click on the different countries in the map and really have fun actually exploring that map and finding out the information. Now, at the risk, well, there are two areas, but at the risk of sounding repetitive, I will repeat what I always believe. I think that sustained investment in equality programs and policies is vital to bring about lasting change. And I see that as the biggest challenge, because when I see pots of cash dropped in for initiatives, that's nice, everyone feels good about it, but it doesn't bring about systemic change. Systemic change requires really long-term investment and gender mainstreaming in all policies and all work. So that's what I would say is the money is one of the biggest ones. And in terms of best practice examples, again, the online resources we have on that page I shared with you earlier literally has about 80 best practice examples. And just to reassure you, behind the scenes, when we have our EPAS plenary meeting, we have this big cloud. Within the cloud, member states are invited to drop in best practice initiatives that they have in different areas, and also our consultative committee organisation. So we're always making sure that best practice circulates around amongst everyone. And I think final one, you have to call out inequality when you see it and stand up for what you believe in. And that's not always easy to do, but you sometimes have to be the disruptive presence in the room to bring about change.
Martin, just before you give your response to the two questions, if you will entertain a question from me, the conversation around male allyship or male champions is so important today, and I think I don't want us to miss the opportunity to hear a bit more from you on that. Perhaps if you could assist with giving a very brief definition for you, how you see yourself as a male ally, what does it mean? And if there are any boundaries as to what is it not, in terms of your own personal definition.
Yes, thank you. I think Francine answered the other questions very well, so I can answer on your Noble. I think it's I don't know if there's a definition in place yet. I haven't heard one, but a male ally is basically a male who advocates for gender equality, basically. And as I said before, as I try to say, I think sometimes the discussion is rather gender-based as well, where the males' voices are not. They are heard, but they're not as many of them. You know, it's mainly females who work towards this. So I think it's very important for every male who feels that they are an ally towards gender equality to speak up and be heard. Because we really need to engage both genders in order to make systemic change. And what is an ally? Like, I think a lot of you can be an ally just supporting and just applauding and just being in agreement with the things and the efforts that's been done. But I think in order to make actual change, you need to be an active ally as well. So be a male who does efforts within, even if it's supporting females who does work, or is actually doing projects like some of the IRC young leaders that do. That's also a way to be an ally. But basically, being in this webinar as a male, you are a male ally. So I don't think there's any definition of when you're not an ally, unless you really hate the efforts that's been done. But I don't think some males do, of course, but we don't talk to them. But if you're a male ally, write on Instagram, do a story, I'm a male ally, and then you're supporting that way. So do whatever you can. I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it definitely does. Thank you so much. I'm also seeing a lot of comments on the chat as well. You know, people just speaking about the insights and their own experiences around gender equality and how it needs to be bolstered in the spaces that they exist in. Maybe, Francine, as a question, a parting question that I see in the Q&A, for yourself and for Martin. There's a question here from Carolina. It says, much of the gender equality discourse in sports focuses on women's inclusion. But how does EPAS navigate emerging gender identity debates in European sports policies? And if we can include Martin in this conversation as well, by asking the question rather, how do we decenter gender, or whichever gender that is dominant at that moment in the space, to allow and make ways for more equitable environments? I think, Francine, as well as a woman in leadership, you might have some personal experiences about, you know, the lack of inclusion and the feeling of being a woman in powerful positions in the everyday. How do we decenter those microaggressions towards anybody in order to create more equitable environments?
Gosh, that's a hard one to answer in a minute. I'll try. So I think I'm very fortunate within EPAS right now and the sport division in the Council of Europe, because within where we're working here, it's like a microcosm where we actually have strong female leadership, and we have a really environment where we are encouraged to thrive and be ourselves. We speak about women in all of the variety, so not just one identity. Women, of course, there's a huge range for being a woman. So in all of the diversity, and I think that's really important to stress. Now, I'm going to say something quite controversial, but can't help it. When you look at the top leadership positions, they're not normally held by women. The top positions in equality where I've ever worked, and they're not held by women. So whilst that's still the top positions are never held by women, we've still got a lot of fighting to do, a lot of change to make. So yeah, I think we have to call things out and bring about change.
Martin?
Yes, I can try to come up with a brief comment as well. I think a lot of it starts with understanding each other and putting yourself in the other's shoe, say the other gender, if you have to put it up like that. There's a great story with a top female leader. I think it was on Facebook or something. I don't remember her name, but she was top, really up there, sitting at the high tables. This big company, there's like a lot of parking spaces, thousands of cars, and then she got pregnant, this woman, and she had to walk 200 meters every time she had to park her car. And when she got up there, she was like, "Why don't we have parking spaces for pregnant women?" Which just shows that even though she is a woman, she's never been pregnant before. So she didn't understand the problem pregnant women has. And that's the same thing that happens when 5 males sit at the top table. They don't understand the issues of the other gender, or if it's 5 females sitting at the top gender, they don't understand the issues of the male gender. So we need diversity in all parts of the organizations in order to deal with this. So it's kind of a detour there, but my comment towards that.
A wonderful detour, definitely much needed input. Colleagues, we are running out of time very quickly because the conversation is so loaded, and I think also there's just not enough spaces like these where we get to share such information. But as we said, we did promise that we are going to capture as many of the questions as we can for a future conversation on a different platform. So we take this webinar as a conversation starter. I'm going to check from Francine and Martin if there's any burning parting shots that you would like to leave us with. I know that you have had that question from Michelle that really assisted us with that one contribution that you would like to make this week. But anything from you, Martin?
No, I just think I want to say thank you to everyone attending, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. It's been a wonderful experience, and keep engaging and have a wonderful week.
Thank you so much. Francine?
Yeah, again, thanks to everyone. And again, Martin, I'm going to copy something that you were mentioning that on your slides that I really liked, which is actually the network is vital as well. Make sure you've got a strong network around you, because when you have a strong network of men and women around you who are really supportive, can make all the difference, and you don't feel quite so so isolated. So I think that's really important to stress the network. And of course, I'm going to say, if you want to sign and follow us on Friday morning, super welcome to join another conversation with us about women's health and sport for our breakfast roundtable. So thank you so much for having me as well.
And thank you so much to everyone who also joined the call. It's really important to have people to discuss these topics with. I think that a lot of us that are on this call can speak about women's issues every day, twice on a Sunday. And hopefully we are not preaching to the choir, and that there are people that came to learn and find more information. Colleagues, as I did say, we do really appreciate the time that you have taken to be with us on this webinar today. Please remember that we still have the Gender Equality Awards. They are open, and the closing date will be the 31st of March. Please, please, please nominate and forward your nominations for consideration. Otherwise, we will meet again. Please follow the Gender Equality Committee on all social media platforms that are available. Follow FISU, and also keep an eye on the FISU website for all the interesting and amazing work that we do. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and keep well.